Hi, welcome to Adoption Now, telling your adoption story. I'm your host, April Fallon. I am the adoptive mother of 4. I don't just talk about adoption, I live adoption. We tell stories from all over the world from the perspective of the birth parent, adoptee, and adoptive parent. We talk about adoption and foster care and the real issues that are happening right now. If you're about to start your adoption journey or you need help in your adoption process, we want to connect you to the resources you need. Check out all of our podcasts at adoption-now.com. Well, today is a huge day. I'm so excited. This is the 100th episode. Yay! What? I cannot believe it. I'm telling you, I have learned so much from this show and from every guest that has shared their story. This show has changed my life, and I've said it before, if it hasn't changed anybody else's life, it's changed ours. It's taught me to be a better parent, and it's led me to the resources that have changed my children's lives. I would not have known about my daughter's eye issues if I didn't have a guest come on and tell me about children who need eye vision therapy. I mean, there have been so many things that people have been saying that have made me realize, oh my goodness, this is what my child needs. And it's taught me that no matter what we go through, we're not alone. There's always a story for us that somebody else has that we can connect to. So I want to thank all of you who have shared your hearts and brought us to this 100th episode. To celebrate, we have Reggie Rivers on. Reggie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Oh, your voice is great.
Thank you.
Yes. You know, you're a professional. You're a former NFL running back. You played 6 seasons with the Denver Broncos. You're the president of a business consulting firm called Corporate Kickoff, president of the Gala team, which helps nonprofits improve their fundraising. And you have an adopted son with your wife, Stephanie. And I'm telling you, you're good at fundraising because that's where we met. And when Reggie says, get your paddle up, I was like, okay, I don't even know if I have the money in my bank account, but I'm doing it. I'm giving. I mean, you're very gifted at what you do.
Well, thank you. And I feel blessed to be able to do the fundraising. I have been a corporate motivational speaker for a lot of years. And I was at a National Speakers Association conference in 2012 where they're talking about what's your value proposition? How do you move the needle for your clients? And I thought, I don't know, my corporate clients, they're huge. They're multi-billion dollar companies. I don't move the needle. But then I thought about the few auction events I did every year and thought, you know, if I help them raise an extra $10,000, they're excited. I'm excited. I feel great for weeks. So I came back from that conference saying, I want to do more auctions. And so that in 2013, I did 7 of them. This past year, we did 97 with 6 auctioneers.
You grew 90 more auctions? That's a lot.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good. I'm telling you. In fact, right now, where's my checkbook? I want to write money to some nonprofit. Wait, we're a nonprofit.
Right. Exactly.
No, but you're good. And not only that, when we sat down and talked to you, my husband and I, you shared your story about adoption. And so you really are passionate about so many different things. And today we're going to talk about that story. So you and your wife, Stephanie, you did not want children. Is that correct?
Did not. In fact, probably when I was about 21, even before that, I was around 17. I think the first time I kind of understood what parenthood was. And my parents had 5 kids. And I saw them raising 5 kids, and I saw the demands that 5 kids put on them. And I understood that, yeah, being a parent is not for the faint of heart. Like, This is a big commitment. And so at 17, I was kind of faintly having this idea, I don't think I want to be a parent. And then at 25, I went to a urologist and said, I'd like to have a vasectomy because my girlfriend at the time had a pregnancy scare. It turned out she wasn't pregnant, but I thought, I'm going to accidentally become a dad here, and I don't want to do that. Well, the urologist was like, I'm not going to give you a vasectomy. You're 25 years old. You're not married. You've never had any kids. I'm not going to give you a vasectomy. Well, fast forward 5 years later, I'm in another relationship with another girl. There's another pregnancy scare. And I think I went back to that same urologist, said, I'd like to have a vasectomy. And he said, you haven't changed your mind over these 5 years? I said, no, I have not. And he said, okay, well, you're still unmarried. You haven't had any kids. You know, really, but if you insist, do me this favor, wait 3 more months. If you still feel this way 3 months from now, come back to me and I'll do the vasectomy. 3 months to the day, I came back, got the vasectomy. So when I met Stephanie, like a year later, and on our first date, or maybe our second date, I told her, hey, listen, I've had a vasectomy. I'm not planning to have any kids. So if that's in your cards, I just want you to let you know up front. And she said, you know, I have uterine fibroids. I'm not even sure if I can have kids. I wasn't planning to have kids either. So we felt like, hey, we're a match made in heaven.
Great.
And we start dating, we fall in love, we get married, and that was 14 years ago.
Oh my goodness. That is so funny that you guys found each other. And so you guys were living just this great life. You're getting plenty of sleep, right? Probably both working full time, living life. And then what?
And then her sister had a baby, Malik. And so it was her first child, but her sister was addicted to methamphetamines and was in and out of jail in her adult life. And so Malik was born. Grandma's basically raising him. Her sister's name is Ebony. And so when Ebony would get out of jail, she would move into Grandma's house. She would help raise Malik briefly, but then she would go back, and that was my first introduction to addiction, that when you're not close to somebody who's an addict, it can be very philosophical. It's like, oh, well, they should get help. They should do this or that. When you're close to somebody, you realize that, yeah, this is a real thing. Like, she is not under her own control. And so when she was heading back to jail again, and Malik was 3.5. And Stephanie flew out there because Malik was getting to the point where it was too much for Grandma.
Right.
And so Stephanie flew out to Ogden, Utah, went to the library with Ebony. They signed a power of attorney, kind of like what you might sign if you were leaving your kid at camp somewhere. And then the next morning, Ebony went in and reported to jail. And Malik, we started making plans. Malik's going to come home with Stephanie to live with us.
Okay, wait. Back the story up. How long had you been married?
We had been married. That's a good question. We got married in 2005, and Malik was born in 2003, and he came to live with us. So we've been married a year.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So flip the script. How does she come to you and say, hey, I think we should bring this little boy home?
So Malik was born while we were dating. Mm-hmm. And so I got to meet him. She got to meet him. We fell in love with Malik, over the time in the first 2 years of his life. And we're watching from a distance. We're from Denver. We're watching in Ogden, Utah. We're kind of seeing what's happening in his life. And we're seeing the strain on Grandma. And we're seeing Ebony going back and forth. And, the situation was getting more and more dire. Actually, at 1.5 years, we had a conversation. And it was, you know what? We didn't plan to have any kids, but I think God might be telling us that we're supposed to have Malik. And so at 1.5, we introduced the idea to the family, and Ebony was on board with it. She was like, yeah, because I can't handle this, and I'm addicted, and I'm going back to jail again. But other members of the family put so much shame on her. Like, you're going to give up your baby? What's wrong with you? Why would you do that? That she backed off of it. So we backed off too. But then at 3.5, and it's funny how I was so determined to have a vasectomy. Stephanie was so convinced that she was never going to be a parent. But once this situation developed, we were 100%, almost from day one, that, yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to have Malik.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. I mean, your heart's just totally changed. And, she was going to lose the child anyway. So if Grandma couldn't take care of this child, what were the options? Foster care?
Foster care. Right.
And you guys weren't going to let that happen. No. And so at 3.5 is when she said, okay. How long was she going back to jail for? Did you know?
It's indeterminate. There was always, she would go back for 6 months, go back for 9 months. We weren't clear, but it was just, the fact that she was, I think there was a period of time, like maybe a 10-year stretch, where she was never out of jail for longer than about 6 months.
Okay.
So she would come out and she would, she has to have a urine test all the time, and, addiction is real. And so she would fail her tests all the time and go back. So
at 3.5, he knew you guys, but he was with his grandma, and now his mom's going back to jail. I mean, what was he like? Was he confused?
He was, in retrospect, we know that he was a little bit detached from everything. Mm-hmm. At the time, he was just a happy-go-lucky kid. You could hand him to anyone and he would be happy. Mm-hmm. And so when he came to stay with us, he had come to visit us for a week by himself before, twice. And we were amazed that during that week, like when he was 2, just turned 2, came for a week, didn't cry for anybody, didn't cry for his grandma, didn't cry for mom, accepted that we're the caregivers at the moment. And he was completely content the whole week. And we thought, that's a little weird. Mm-hmm. And then when he came to live with us at 3.5, it was just, you could tell like that first week, it was like the other weeks that he had been there. He was on vacation. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks was the first time that he raised any question like, where's grandma?
Right.
And he said, well, she's at her house. And he's like, oh, okay. And, he was the kind of kid you could take him to the park and, other kids would take 5 steps and look back at their parents and then take 5 more steps and look back at their parents. Malik, you would take him to the park. He would walk in a straight line, would never look back, would just go start playing with other kids. And, it was just on the one hand, it made it really easy for us to make this transition. But on the other hand, we realized, that's not quite normal behavior.
Right.
And so almost the first week he got here, we took him to a child psychologist. Also for our benefit, we weren't parents. We're like, we don't even know. He might be exhibiting signs of problems that he's having. We're just not aware of it. So we started going to counseling right away. And after about 2 years, Malik started to display some of the behaviors you would have expected a younger kid to have. Someone would ring the doorbell, he would hide behind our legs, even though he's now 5 years old.
Right.
Or he would, we'd take him to the park and he would take those 5 steps and like look back to see if we're still watching him. And so it was interesting to see him in a delayed basis start to have those younger symptoms.
Kind of, it makes me feel teary because that just means he's trusting you, right? Whereas before he wasn't he didn't trust people because he was having fun and doing his thing, but were they going to stay and who was going to be caring for him? And when you have one consistent caregiver, the child never even questions if mom's going to be there, but they have that moment of, I'm looking for you. I trust you. I love you. I know you. And when a child goes from caregiver to caregiver, they don't look for anyone. They're going to look for something for their needs to be met. But like you're saying, like when they're at the park, they just go with the next person that they're with. And so it's interesting that you guys knew as first-time parents that was something that wasn't normal and that you got him the therapy right away. I have a question about when you sign paperwork. So you go to Utah, you go to the library, you're going to take this child home. You only had to sign a piece of paper? Why is that?
It was a family situation. And so with this power of attorney just gave us, the right to take Malik with us. It didn't really give us any more rights than a camp counselor might have. We could take him to the emergency room if he got hurt. But then later we started to pursue guardianship.
Okay.
And so that was the moment when Malik's dad got involved. So he had not really been that involved. He would go see Malik periodically. In fact, he was at the house the day Stephanie took Malik. But he sat there and watched her pack up his stuff and didn't say a word, didn't say goodbye, didn't say anything. And then after a year, he called and he said, hey, thanks for watching my son. I want you to send him back. And I was like, well, we're not sending him back.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you called. We'd like for you to sign this guardianship document so that we can become guardians of Malik. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. And so that began this whole process we had to go through. And I basically explained to him that, listen, we're not going to send Malik back. We plan to raise Malik, but we want your consent to do everything that we're going to do. We could try to do it without your consent, but we want your consent. And if you sign this, Malik's now going to have 4 parents. Stephanie and I will be his parents, and you and Ebony will still be his parents. And so it took a while. It took a year and some coaxing, but eventually he did sign it.
Really?
And
did he come and visit at all?
Yes, he did come and visit. And, we were scared to death.
Right.
He's a pretty tough guy. He's been in and out of jail. He has stabbed people. He has been stabbed. He gets in fights all the time. He drinks heavily. And, I can say this stuff now. We have a great relationship with him now. He has matured tremendously. He's now such a positive influence in Malik's life. He talks to Malik once a week at least, sometimes twice a week. He sends him basketball shoes and other stuff. And so they have a great relationship now. But in the beginning, it was really tense. So he came to visit. We took all the knives out of the kitchen and we put them in our bedroom drawers, right? And we're like...
I mean, that's real.
Yeah.
I mean, that's intense that you had him stay at your house and hiding knives. Oh my gosh. Did you ever think, what am I doing? You didn't want any kids, and now here you are hiding knives. You're involved in kind of the drug world, which is shocking.
Right.
And now you are bringing this kind of dangerous person into your home for this child. You must have changed a lot and stepped up to a fatherly role that you didn't know was in you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I I think I understood right away that with Aaron, the father, that he never had a dad. And there's an age gap. So Stephanie, I think, is 13 years older than her younger sister. And so I'm probably, I'm 50, I'll be 51 next month. I think that I'm probably 15 years older than Aaron. And so right away, I kind of understood, you know what? This guy's been through a lot. Now his son is here. He's now calling me. He's talking to me. I'm going to pretend like I'm his dad. And I'm going to be firm with him. I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to demand respect from him. And so that's what would happen. I would be very respectful to him. I would call him about things that were going on in Malik's life and let him know that these things are happening. But then he would respond to us sometimes. He would, with various epithets and cursing and text messages and all of that. And so then we would just cut off the contact and just say, listen, we're not going to communicate with you if it's going to be that way. And we would stop talking to him for 3 months or 4 months. And then we would resume again. We would initiate and start again and be respectful. And so over time, he just started to be treat me the way I was treating him. And so when he came to our house, we were like, we all took a deep breath and said, okay, what are we going to do if something happens? We said, well, all of his problems involve alcohol. So there's no drinking in the house. So we just told him before he came, listen, we don't drink. I don't drink alcohol. Stephanie barely drinks alcohol. We don't drink in our house. So if you can accept that, you're welcome to stay here. And he's like, yeah, I can accept that. And so he came. He was on his best behavior. We were on our best behavior. It was a great visit. He has come and stayed with us probably 6 times over the years.
Wow.
And only that first time was the nerve-wracking one.
Right.
The rest of them were. The second one was also nerve-wracking, but the first one was like we were all on edge.
Yeah, I mean, I bet. I want to talk about when you first brought Malik home. How did you tell him you're going to stay here? I mean, did you say, call me Dad? Now, how did he start calling you Dad? Because were you Uncle Reggie? I
was Uncle Reggie, yes. And so when we didn't tell him he was staying forever. When we brought him home, we just brought him home. And we didn't say, this is now your new home. But he did notice. We had 8 days notice from when we knew we were taking him to when he arrived. And so during that 8 days, I went shopping and bought a race car bed, and we got some other, pictures and posters to put up in his room.
Were you excited?
I was excited, but I was I was excited, but I was also pretty scared. It's like I knew that parenthood wasn't a joke. And I knew that, we're doing this. I mean, this is for real. But I also knew that once you make the decision to do it, you're doing it. And so I'm not a person who regrets things. If I made a choice, I made that choice. I might not make it again, but I don't just look in the rearview mirror and say, well, yeah, that's the choice I made at that moment. And I kind of understood that when you make a choice on parenthood, you can't change your mind about it. Like, this kid is counting on you. And so I didn't entertain anything other than, we're going forward and this is a new phase of life. And so he definitely, when he arrived, he recognized, oh, I've got a room.
Right.
Like before, he didn't. You sleep wherever. And now he's like, I got a room and a race car bed and this and that. And we arranged, found a daycare for him to go to during that time. And so, no, we didn't tell him. And then the way he started calling us mom and dad, the kids at his preschool really are the ones that caused him to do that. I would show up to pick him up, and they'd be out on the playground at the end of the day, and the kids would see me walking up to the gate, and they would yell out, Malik, your dad's here. And Malik would say, that's not my dad, that's my Uncle Reggie. And so the next day I arrive, and the kids would say, hi, Uncle Reggie. Malik, your dad's here. Eventually, it was like, not even eventually, it was like 6 months. There was one day we were sitting in the living room, and Malik just looked up at Stephanie and he said, you're my mom, huh? And she said, yeah, I'm kind of your mom. And he said, and you're my dad. I said, yeah, kind of my dad. He's like, okay. And that was that. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, wow, that was weird. And then he said, Uncle Reggie, can I have some orange juice? and so, he understood the concept on his own somehow within 6 or 7 months. And then probably within a year, he started calling us mom and dad.
You're very close to him now. We're going to talk a little bit about that as the story develops. But I want you to address, because I get this question a lot from dads. And moms are like, I want to adopt. I'm so excited. My husband has a question, and he always says, I don't know if I could love a child. It's not my own blood. Can you just address that for dads?
Well, it's a funny thing. Part of the reason I didn't want to be a parent was because of kind of that question. I thought, if you have a child, there's no turning back from it. How do you know you're going to love this person? I kind of looked at parenthood as like this mail order bride kind of situation. Like, Lord, send me a bride. I promise I'm going to love her. And I think, well, yeah, but I need to know her. I need to know her personality. And that's how I thought about children. And I thought, yeah, I'll probably love my kid, whoever it is, but I don't know if I'm going to like them, And so that was part of my fear of having a child. With Malik, we had the benefit of, I met him. I got to know him. I fell in love with him as a human being. I knew who he was. And that was definitely a big part of it. I think that now that we have become parents, I can recognize that the simple fact that this vulnerable person arrived in our home caused me to love him on a different level that wasn't, I can now recognize that I didn't need to know him before we adopted him. I felt like I did. I really did. But after he arrived, there's something about the vulnerability of children that just forces you to be like, yeah, I got to take care of this person. I mean, look at him. I got to take care of him. Right. I mean, he almost touched that stove, right? you as a man, I think women feel this too, but certainly as a man, there is a heroic imagery that you have of yourself as a father. And I used to think of my father this way, as a hero, that, man, my father is so strong and he can do anything. And I recognized that when Malik came into the house, I understood the difference in strength that I had and that he had. And I recognized that I could scoop him up and save him from things. And that did a lot for me. Like, it made me feel like a hero. And so I think that on the front end, I thought that I needed to know Malik, and I fell in love with him. That's why. On the back end, I could see that if I hadn't known Malik, I probably still would have fallen in love with him.
So true. That little boy changed your life.
Yes, he did.
That's what adoption is all about, is that you open your life to something unexpected, and all of a sudden these little humans change your life, and they call out of you what you didn't know it was in there.
Right.
We have to take a break. When we come back, I have a million other questions about Adoption Day, your relationship with his birth parents, and how he's doing as he's a teenager now, right?
Right.
So
15.
he's playing all the sports, and I'm sure you're so proud. So we'll be right back. You're listening to Adoption Now. Welcome back to Adoption Now, telling your adoption story. I'm your host, April Fallon. Today we have Reggie Rivers, a former running back from the Denver Broncos, on. He's telling his adoption story with this little boy, Malik, who's changed your life, and Stephanie's life, your wife. Tell us about Adoption Day. In your story, you are fighting with the birth dad. Birth mom has gone to jail. I mean, you just got this awakening to this whole life, right? You're like, what am I in? And you're trying to really finalize and make sure that this boy is going to stay with you, be your son, and be safe. I mean, tell us about when you finalized and how you got to that point.
So we had, in dealing with the birth father, and I want to emphasize again, we have a great relationship with him now. He has a great relationship with Malik, but back then it was very contentious. And so he had grudgingly agreed to sign the guardianship papers. Then maybe 6 months after that, I contacted him to say, actually before the guardianship papers, we contacted him to sign a release so that we could get a passport for Malik. We were going on vacation to Mexico, and he resisted, and then after about a month said, okay, I'll sign that. So we signed that so we get a passport. Then he signed the guardianship papers. Now it was time for the adoption. And so I called him and emailed him, and we talked, and he said, I'm not going to do that. And I said, so Aaron, here's my vision of this, that someday Malik is going to be an adult, and he's going to have access to all of his paperwork from the whole adoption process. And what I want him to see is that the four of us got together and made decisions that we thought were in his best interest, and we're all on the same team. We all love him. We're all his parents. We're all acting on his behalf. If you won't give your consent, we don't have to have your consent. But if we don't get your consent, then we have to prove that you're an unfit parent, that you abandoned Malik, and that and we can prove that. Here's how we can prove that. And I don't want to put that into the record. I don't want Malik to someday read this stuff. He said, yeah, I can't do it. I don't, when Malik's an adult, I don't want him to have a conversation with him and say, yeah, I quit fighting for you and just gave you up. And so I think that he really thought that we couldn't adopt Malik without his consent.
I mean, realistically, could he have taken that child?
No.
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 You guys had already done your home study. You had to do that, right?
Right,
Even
correct.
if it's blood family. You had to do a home study. And I mean, really, he really believed that he had some sort of power in this. But I have heard that a lot, that birth dads don't want their child to look at the paperwork and say, but you signed right here. I see your signature.
Right.
But the option is then we had to prove that you were not fit. I mean, that's a hard choice.
Right.
Both are not great.
Right.
But it sounds like he decided, okay.
He did not.
He did not.
He would not sign the papers. And so we had to
You had to do
go
that?
down the road of proving he was unfit. And then, and it was a power thing. You know, he was like, he thought that he could just say, hey, if I don't sign it, then you're never going to, I'm fine with you guys just being his guardians. You're not going to become his real parents. And I talked to him many times. I said, Aaron, we don't have to have your consent. Malik's been living with us now for 3 years. When we took him from Utah, you didn't contact us for more than a year. And so if you had left your car parked at our house and we started driving it and we started making the payments on it, we might have a legal claim on that car because you abandoned it. That's kind of like what happened with your child. And he says, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to sign anything. So
Oh, wow.
we had to prove it, and we did. And then he didn't come to the court date. He didn't call into the court date. And so it was a non-issue. We were just adopted him.
I just can't believe he wouldn't sign. So did you have to then hire a lawyer, and did it make it go longer?
It probably made it go a little bit longer. And we had a lawyer already, and we there was a guardian ad litem who was assigned on Malik's behalf. And so, yeah, we just kind of followed the process along. And I think we took Malik in when he was 3.5, and I think he was 6 or maybe almost 7 when we actually adopted him.
That's a long process.
Yeah, it could have been faster, but we just kept waiting for Aaron. We just thought,
Right.
what's the hurry? Malik's here. We'll wait. We'll give him some time to cool off, and we'll try again in 3 months.
At that point, did he take your last name?
Yes.
So what was that like?
It was cool. And we didn't take away any part of his name. So his name was Malik Isaiah Adams, and now his name is Malik Isaiah Adams Rivers.
Okay.
And so I thought it was important that Malik hold on to who he is and who he was born to be. But I was proud that, he became Malik Rivers, and I think he was proud to become Malik Rivers. My high school mascot down in San Antonio was the Rohawks, RO-HAWKS. And somehow Malik had seen that word, or I'd heard that word, and he just loved it. He just thought it was hilarious. The word Rohawk was tickled him. And so he would introduce himself. There was a brief period where he would say his name was Malik Isaiah Adams Rivers Rohawk. And people were always like, huh? It sounded cute, but they're like, huh?
What?
And the other thing we really have tried to do is, when we first adopted Malik, I started reading about adoption. Right? I didn't know about
was that
adoption
scary
now.
or good?
It was both, right? It was very educational. I didn't know about a resource like what you have put together. I just knew I don't know anything. And so one of the things I read was that adoptive children have this longing to know their birth parents. And it doesn't matter how loving a home they're in. It doesn't matter how old they get. There is this mystery that lives in their head. They have this longing that they'll be 40 years old, 50 years old, 80 years old. And if they've never known who their birth parents were, they will go on a mission and try to find them. And so I thought, well, we know who Malik's birth parents are. We should try to keep the door open for as long as we can to let Malik decide at what point he wants to break off contact. And so that's why we kept engaging with Aaron maybe longer than we really needed to, because I didn't want to cut it off for Malik. Well, we had a 3-year period where we had to cut it off. Like, there was no contact at all because he got belligerent. We had to get a restraining order against him, and just things were kind of going crazy. And but then after about 3 years, we reached out to him again and said, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? Just want to check in on you. And we've reestablished contact, and everything has been great since then. And so he and Malik talk on a regular basis. And Malik has, as he gets older, is making his own judgment about who Aaron is and what kind of relationship he wants to have with them. And now I'm so glad that we didn't cut it off early.
Yeah. Because he can't say you took anything away from him. You just added to his life.
Right.
And that's really what adoption is about, is that there's enough loss, right? So you don't want to cut off the birth parents if you can, and you stayed in it a lot more than people would, because it's scary. It's scary when somebody has to do with drugs or alcohol. We have that too. We have very, very high boundaries, but at the same time, I can't just cut her off. I can't not talk to her. I can't involve the children that are biological siblings to my children. They're a part of our family, and that's what adoption is all about. I want to add to their life. I don't want to take away. And so at the end of the day, they can say, hey, thanks, Mom, for letting us make our own choices. So I think that's such a great point, so important. I'm very curious to how your wife did in all this, because this is her sister's child, and that's painful in itself that your sister is in jail. How did she attach, and how did she do as a mother?
She did great. She went from aunt to mother, and the upside of this type of adoption was that she was still Ebony's sister, and grandma still had her grandson in the family, and Stephanie was stepping up into a role, and that many people in her family praised her for stepping up to take that role. She really enjoyed being a mother right away. Just all of it, all of the even the struggles of motherhood, I think that it really fulfilled something in her that she had wanted. And it took a while. There was a lot of guilt that she had about, she felt like she had put this on me. So when, we weren't planning to have kids, and now it's her sister who has a baby, and we're adopting her sister's baby. And now it's her sister's baby daddy who's causing all these problems in our life. And so she would apologize to me, and I'd be like, Stephanie, we made this decision together. I wasn't forced into this. I fell in love with Malik, and we agreed to do this. This is what we did as a married couple. So it doesn't matter that it happened to be your sister's son. And so I think that part of it, she probably didn't get over the guilt of that, maybe for 8 or 9 years, that it would still bubble up. But I think that she could see in my interactions with Malik, and that, I was truly in love with him. Nothing was forced upon me.
Okay. From what you have described about Malik, it sounds like, and this happened for us, and it happens for a lot of families, is that this child is not my blood child, but this child could be my blood child. Like, this child is so me. I mean, my son is so me. He does the things I did as a kid. He responds the way that I respond. I mean, we are the same. I love this boy. And sometimes he'll say like, oh, Mom, I remember when he was little, he said, Mom, was I in your tummy? And I was like, I had to think about it for a second. And I'm like, no, you weren't, but I wish you were. I mean, it's that close. And I'm like that. I see a part of myself, and my husband does too, with all of our children. It sounds like that happened for you. Like, if you were to have a child, it'd be Malik.
Right.
A blood child, right?
Right.
I mean, you're a lot alike, and he's got your personality. He's outgoing. He plays sports. I mean, doesn't that help so much in this whole process?
It does. Yeah, it really does. And, I'm sure that if Malik was into other things, I would still love him, and I would get into these other things. But it is nice that he's into the same things I was into when I was in high school. Girls, football, basketball, lacrosse, and not necessarily in that order. It's just right. He's and it's fun. He's now almost 6 feet tall.
How old is he?
He's 15.
Oh my gosh.
He's 160 pounds, and he's a pretty good athlete, and he does well at all of his sports. And, he's got, sometimes Stephanie and I, we jokingly say he's got Kanye confidence. Like he'll say, Dad, it's football season. Dad, you're not going to have to worry about paying for me to go to college, because I'm going to get a scholarship, a D1 scholarship. It's kind of so then in basketball season, Mom and Dad, you're not going to have to worry about paying for college for me. I'm going to get a D1 scholarship in basketball. I'm the best player on our team. And I think, well, you might not be, but
but you keep believing that.
It's nice.
Were you like that as a kid?
No, I wasn't quite. No, he has more confidence than I had when he's in a lot of ways he has more confidence. It's interesting to watch him. I was more, if you passed me the ball and I had the open shot, I would take it and I might make the shot, and I was confident. But I wasn't confident enough to say, hey, give me the ball and I'll make the shot. Like, I didn't have that next layer. Right. Malik has that. In lacrosse, he wants to take the shot all the time. And I look and I think, wow, I didn't have that. And this is something, it's a real asset. That kind of confidence, that willingness to take the chance, that willingness to say, hey, I could be the dude, I could be the guy. And then when you miss, he's kind of unconscious about it. Like, he doesn't notice his misses. It's
right.
like,
He just keeps going.
yeah, he keeps going.
Yeah,
Dad, you
that's
see
amazing.
those 2 goals I made? You know you took 27 shots?
Right.
But he doesn't notice the 25 that missed. He just
Right.
notices the 2 that went in. He's like, woo! Yeah, I had a great game.
That's amazing. I mean, I think that is such a gift. I think that you guys have changed his life. Us as adoptive parents, we don't like that when people say, you're amazing or you're a hero. But I can say that because I'm another adoptive parent. You changed his life. You fought for this child. And that confidence would not have come out if you didn't draw it out and didn't give him the safety and the life that he has. What happened with his birth mother? Where is Ebony?
She's out of jail now. She's been out for a year and a half. She has another child who's Mason is 3 now, I think. She's raising him.
Do you think you're going to get that child?
I don't.
Does that cross your mind?
It crosses our mind, but I don't think so. She's doing way better.
That's good.
Yeah.
And does she have a relationship with Malik?
She does. Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of relationship?
It's not a mother-son relationship. It's more like siblings or aunts and nephew. Yeah, I don't think he was ever really attached to Ebony. He knows intellectually that that's his mom, but he thinks of grandma really as his first mom.
What's the one piece of advice you have for adoptive families that are in the process, they haven't brought their child home?
They haven't. So maybe I don't know enough about the question. Like, do they know that they know the child they're going to have?
They're about to be parents. They're about to adopt. They're scared to death.
Well, I would say that, yeah, your life is about to turn upside down. It's like, I have an employee right now. She's 24 years old. She's about to have her first baby in March. Her life's about to turn upside down. She's 31 months pregnant. And when you have a baby, whether you're having a by birth or by adoption, yeah, it's going to fundamentally change your life in ways that are hard to predict. And for us, it was just this focus on this person who's now living in your home, who is not an independent person. It's not a self-sufficient person. You've had guests in your home before. You've gotten up and made breakfast for your guests. You've cleaned up a little bit after your guests. You understand what it is to have a guest in your home, but all of a sudden you have a guest who is completely dependent on you.
It's never ending. That's
Right.
not encouraging.
Well, but it's not encouraging, but it's a burden, but it's also, it brings something out in you that is different than anything you've ever experienced, that the responsibility of raising this little person changes you. I know that when I was trying to teach Malik how to just cross the street by himself to walk to school, I would walk with him and I would explain it, but it's all intellectual. I'm telling him, but he's like, yeah, Dad, you're here. I'll go when you tell me to go. Well, then we started, he was in 3rd or 4th grade. Then I would walk a little bit behind him, like 3 or 4 feet behind him. And we get to the intersections and he still wouldn't look at the cars. He'd be like looking over his shoulder at me to see if I'm going to tell him to stop. Well, then I'm walking 20 feet behind him. And then there's one day I'm like 100 yards behind him where I realize I'm just a witness at this point. I can't help him.
Right.
And he's got to cross these streets by himself. And he did it. And putting that responsibility on him changes him in a way. It makes him more aware. And I think the same happens with adoptive parents. When you bring this adopted child home, you've put a responsibility on yourself that is going to change you, because you're not going to shirk the responsibility. You're going to, when the baby's crying in the middle of the night, you're going to get up. And you're going to deal with that. When the baby needs to be changed, you might think, oh, I don't ever want to change a diaper. You're going to start changing diapers and have a tolerance for it, because it has to happen. And the kids, they put these demands on you that you can't say no to, and it changes who you are as a person. And you start to feel, you start to feel like a superhero, even though you're so put upon. It's like, it's exhausting, but exhilarating at the same time.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, this is our 100th show, and then you told me
I played exactly 100 games in the NFL. So we have this in common,
yes,
too.
and this might be your number.
Right.
I mean, maybe you need to go buy a lotto ticket or something. I don't know.
so.
This is amazing. Thank you so much, Reggie.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like Adoption Now on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and remember, all of our podcasts are available on iTunes. Thank you for tuning in to Adoption Now. I'm your host, April Fallon. See you next week.